Yo guys, 2018 was quite the year, wasn't it? We've done quite the fun run under the sun. Now, I don't know about you, but ending the year just doesn't feel right if you don't end it with some sort of rewind. For 2017, I did my top 8 software and games, and so this year I thought, nah, let's not do that again. For 2018, let's do something a bit different.
Yeah. It's rewind time. You know, if I control rewind, I would want all of Jabrils prototypes of 2018.
Forrest, is this what you wanted? Fine. This week, let's take a look at my 2018 prototypes. I am very excited to do this, but you guys need to know something before we start. In my house, art comes last. Repeat after me. Art comes last. Okay, now that you're equipped with visual disappointment, Romaine, let us begin. But before we get into 2018, I want to start off with a few projects that were started before 2018. Hey, cut me some slack. I don't know how else you'd see these, and I want to share them with you, alright? Starting with, yes, Chips World 2. Back in high school or so, I created and actually finished a little game called Chips World. And when I first learned about Unity, it had always been my dream to create 3D games. And so, my first instinct was to try and learn the engine by making a sequel to one of the only games that I finished up until that point. And so, I spent a few months developing Chips World 2. And to be honest, I learned a lot. I learned about Unity's collision system, physics system, effects system, instantiating, the whole works. But over time, I lost steam developing it. Mostly at the fact that I was learning about the Unity engine at such a fast rate, and that in effect made me start more and more prototypes focused around the new stuff that I was learning, which is a nice segue into the next prototype. Monster City Rampage. I started this project after only a few months into learning Unity, and I was using a lot of stuff that I learned about the engine with previous projects like Chips World 2 for example. This was supposed to be a Godzilla inspired arcade game where you emerge from the sea, do as much damage as possible to the procedurally generated destructible city, then return to the ocean without being defeated by the defending military. Now, I don't have much to show for this project because I didn't get very far before getting distracted with another prototype. But yeah, that was at least the idea for Monster City Rampage. 310K Battlegrounds. This was supposed to be my end-all be-all pinnacle project that I've always wanted to make since I was about 9 years old. But little did I know, with only about a year of Unity experience, I was not ready. The idea for this game was heavily inspired by Dragon Ball Z. I wanted to create some new intellectual property that had power levels, transformation, flying, fighting, energy blast, the whole works. But shortly into development, I learned that I was way in over my head. At the time, I didn't even know how to calculate vector maps. So how could I expect to shoot energy blasts without knowing how to propel it in an input direction? So once I ran into enough barriers, I did what any smart developer would do. Learned absolutely nothing from my noviceness and moved on to my next single developer AAA project. Project Seed. Again, this had crazy scope. The idea for this game was this. What if you mix Dragon Ball Z, Grand Theft Auto, and XCOM? Well, you'd have a game that would take a single developer 37 years to complete. That's what you got. I wrote out a little cliche story about a boy whose village gets violated by organization. You then set out to dismantle said organization by visiting other towns and cities, learning new moves, getting stronger, making allies, to eventually face off with the organization. Now that I think about it, the scope was on par to what Breath of the Wild ended up becoming. Only 10 times the amount of features planned, and a 300 times smaller team size. Damn noob. Of course, I didn't get very far with this project, and I moved on to my next prototype that was equally as ambitious. Project Fleet. I eventually found Unity's nav mesh system. Essentially, Unity's nav mesh system is a pretty intensive pathfinding library that you can just drop onto your objects, give it a vector location, and Unity will do all the hard pathfinding work for you, getting the object to that location while avoiding obstacles. And with this, I want to put a Dream RTS prototype into development. Yes, I know, I need to dial down the scope of my projects. Trust me, I understand. But the idea for this prototype was to recruit agents for your fleet, train them up, gather resources, equip vehicles, then overthrow a bad organization with their personalized armada. Now, I actually got pretty far into developing the engine for this prototype. In fact, I even had a little devlog for it. If you want to check that out, link is in the description. I, at this point of working with Unity, became a pretty confident developer. So it was pretty easy to develop this prototype. It just took the time dedication to see it through. However, there was one challenge that was very difficult at the time. I wanted to add an upgradable buildings feature, where over time you can add floors and more space to buildings. But at the time, Unity's nav mesh system didn't support dynamic nav mesh baking, meaning once you start the game, your navigation map could not be updated or changed. Now, I had a couple of workarounds in mind, but eventually Unity added dynamic nav mesh baking, and I wiped off the sweat from my head because I didn't have to write my own pathfinding system just to have this feature. But I also felt the need to start over from scratch. Then I accidentally ejected the hard drive while Unity was still running or something, and my main scripts got corrupted. No, I wasn't using GitHub at the time, whatever, sue me. And of course, naturally, this killed all of my motivation for this project. And then, of course, I moved on to other prototypes. But I have an actual playable build for the version 1 prototype, and if you want to check out the vision, link to that is also in the description. I at one point had extreme 90s fever, and I wanted to develop some game that gave me crazy 90s feels. Borla Z was that project. The idea with this project was to start with creating a level editor, and then create a bunch of levels using that editor, and then ship the game with a 100 level campaign and the level editor so you can upload and download new campaigns. Something like a classic throwback to Lode Runner or Speedy Egbert. The simpler days. Anywho, I got relatively far with this prototype, and I still believe in the potential for Borla Z. But I believe around this time I also started this channel that you're currently watching, and most of my time went into making it the best it could possibly be. So naturally, it was phased out. But I went back to work on Borla Z not too long ago, but the way I used to code back then is just too... yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe I can get my hands on a Nintendo Switch dev kit, which will greatly inspire me to finish the game and release it on the Switch. Maybe? Yes? No? Maybe? And those were all the pre-2018 prototypes. Now let the actual 2018 prototypes begin. Rick James to Dave Chappelle deepfakes. This was a project that I started to work on mostly to test out my new sweet GPU when I got it. But I was doing a lot of traveling during this time, so I got lost in the sauce with this project. But the idea was to simply use deepfakes to superimpose actual Rick James' face on the skit that Dave Chappelle did about Rick James. Inception horns. And for those of you that get the tightness of this joke, just know that I love you. There were quite a few complications with this project, mostly at the fact that the image quality differs so much. I mean, we're talking media taken in the 1970s versus 2000s. There's some 30 years of image quality advancements in there. But yeah, I really should return to finish this project because I personally think it's something that the internet deserves. Brainboard is a productivity app that I threw into development because simply, I needed a solution like this. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my Trello boards, Google Calendar, and the like, but I needed some sort of dependency productivity app to be able to visualize what needs to be done before I can do other things. Like, for example, write my next machine learning library so I can film some 15 AI related videos. Damn it, Jabril, put down the candy and stop being lazy. But I did at least release a functional build of the software with a roadmap that I'll hopefully get to. Link to that is in the description. But to go off on a quick tangent, imagine being able to put on some AR glasses and popping these nodes out in the 3D space. So you can place down to-do nodes all over your room, and at any point you can save and load these nodes in that space. Then you can go to, like, say, your office and have a different set of to-do nodes based on your office all over the place, and man. A mainstream AR glasses solution cannot come faster, I tell ya. Drag AR. This was a game while amidst the AR hype I was going through, I wanted to finish and ship. And the idea for this game was to make a very simple classic gear shifting style race car game, but in 3D AR space. And yeah, that's pretty much all that went into this one. Now, I won't lie to you. I initially got super hyper about AR after trying Magic Leap and HoloLens, but looking at AR through your phone, it just isn't as exciting, unfortunately. Yeah, whatever. What are you gonna do? But despite that, I really want to start shipping more titles. So maybe look forward to seeing this released in 2019? We'll see what happens. The Legend of Zelda Go tech demo. So wait, first of all, I'm about to make a full episode on AR and you will hear a lot more about this, so hang tight. But I started and almost finished this Legend of Zelda Go project. And Nintendo Papa, please cease and desist me. My channel desperately needs to press. I kid. Or do I? I don't know. But this is essentially an AR tech demo that I'm developing with the sole purpose to figure out the boundaries with Google's AR Core. Are we limited to developing general tabletop AR games using AR Core? Or can we develop a fully fleshed out hack and slash AR adventure? Finding these kind of answers is the purpose of this tech demo. I ran out of time in the initial run, but all that's left for me to do is to add a little battle sequence. But again, hang tight, full episode on this progress is coming soon. I mean, you can't tell me this doesn't look tight. Tower Trekkers. Now, some of you guys know this title because some of you were there for its inception. I entered Legendary 41 in 2018 and live streamed my progress on Twitch. We unfortunately didn't complete the project in the jam time, but I thought that I liked the project so much that I developed it to completion. Made some great progress, everything was looking good, but then I realized how animation intensive building a fighting engine was and decided to scrap it for now. I might come back to the idea whenever I get a better animation workflow going, but until then, I do remember releasing some sort of build a while ago. But if I recall correctly, it's all kinds of broken. Link is in the description, but proceed at your own risk. Revolt Skies. Man, this project is far too ambitious. But that's okay, because I understood that going into it. I woke up one day and was in a super space vibe. I do not remember why, but I spent all day building and experimenting with a space simulation. But unlike the other ambitious projects, with this one, I told myself, no matter what, at the end of the day, I would showcase my research by making some sort of YouTube episode from my progress. And that I did. Link is in the description if you want to check that out. I highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun. But looking back, I kind of wish I would have uploaded it to this channel. I'm always developing little side projects, but oftentimes I feel like there's not a lesson that I can share with you guys. And so, most of them don't even see the light of day. But looking back on the year, I don't know. Maybe you're more interested in seeing prototypes than I may think. If you want to share your opinion, vote using the poll. It should be in the top right corner. Or just let me know what you think in the comments. But regardless, I learned a lot about simulating space with this prototype, and honestly wish I had more time to develop something more with this simulation. But I guess here's to wishful thinking. Dragon Ball Z ECS. So, Unity 3D had just released their ECS. ECS meaning Entity Component System. And I noobishly made a lot of crazy assumptions about what it was before researching it. ECS is like Entity Component System, I believe, and the idea behind it is that you're able to send Unity components to the GPU to do all the calculations instead of the traditional way, doing the calculations on the CPU, which can easily clog up and give you bottlenecks and whatnot. No, Jabril, you are absolutely unequivocally wrong. Long story short, ECS is a method used to optimize memory on your CPU, sometimes giving you 10 times plus the amount of computing power. It is not utilizing your GPU. Damn noob. But anywho, you know the first thing your boy had a prototype using ECS while rubbing his hands together was Cowboy Bebop. Wait, no. I mean, Dragon Ball Z. And that I did. I made a little prototype that uses 100,000 individual meshes to make Goku's Spirit Bomb, and I think it turned out looking pretty sweet. You can check out the full video demo link in the description, or even the source code. But be patient because I'm planning on also making the full video on ECS, hopefully sometime soon, who knows. And last but not least, the prototype that I am most proud to show off for reasons you'll soon find out, Staggered, my first official serious game. The idea for Staggered is simple. It's a 4-player physics-based fighting game with a roster of characters with custom loadouts. And it is a lot of fun. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the developer. I get to say that because I've done many playtests and collected feedback from many folks. I've even hosted a playtest party back in the summer. Now, someday closer to release, I'm going to give you guys a full beautifully edited video on Staggered, but for a quick run through, this was one of those projects that you accidentally fall into developing. It all started because I wanted to make an AI boxing game. But then I realized how much I had to learn about Unity 3D's physics engine before I can turn over inputs to AI. Then I got to a certain point of working with the engine for AI and I realized, whoa, this is actually pretty fun to just play against myself. But what would happen if I were to add swords? Added swords and it became even more fun. Well, what would happen if I were to add limb detaching? Added limb detaching and it became even more fun. And now what about weapon variation? And it just kept growing and growing until we have what you see before you today. But lads, don't think I forgot about the original plan for AI. Just let me ship this game first before we return to that. Speaking of which, I have a public alpha build releasing sometime within the next 60 days. That's about as good as I can pinpoint it. But if you want to know when that release is, you can stay up to date by visiting jabrils.com/staggered. I hope you all support me with this alpha release. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. Now, we talked about a lot of stuff, so be sure to check out the descriptions for the links to everything. But besides that, it's begging time. Please do me a huge favor, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, hit that bell icon to be notified when I upload the next video, and also please come follow me on Twitter and Instagram for some exclusive sneak peeks like this Star Wars ECS demo for example. Yeah, you're looking at 6,000 lightsabers, all rendered at the same time, at 60 FPS, Twitter exclusive too. Lastly, if you're interested in supporting my work beyond YouTube, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon for patronage. And shout out to these top patrons for your support. But alright guys, that's all for this week. I hope to see you all next week. But whatever the case may be, remember to always feed your curiosity.